Hello and welcome to Coffee Break. This is Steve Barrett, the editorial director of PR Week. I'm here with Richard Edelman, who's the CEO of the biggest PR firm in the world and one of the best known PR professionals in the world, if not the best. Richard, how are you doing today? And welcome to the show.
So it's been a long, strange trip, Steve.
It has.
We're going to the Big East basketball tournament, March 10th, and then being locked down for the next 8 weeks in my apartment in New York, never going outside once. My highlight of the day was going outside and to the terrace and banging the pot at 7 o'clock.
Healthcare workers, yeah.
Exactly. And
how's that been for you? Because you're a bundle of energy. You're usually flying around the globe, seeing clients, seeing your Edelman offices. How's it been being cooped up, and almost in lockdown, literally?
I mean, behavior modification is the word. I mean, I got to the point where I would just pace around the apartment. I would do sort of laps around, and I learned to do my training sessions inside the apartment. I set up the cones and would run in and out of the cones and sometimes smash the furniture.
Oh my.
Not hugely popular.
No, I bet.
No, I also got to learn to live with a parakeet, not mine, the stepson, and how to avoid the bird landing on my head by going like this. But look, the good side is, big bonding with family. The other side, my mother-in-law died after 170 days with COVID, and trying to get her medicine to Mexico and going through that whole ordeal was just a great window into what everybody else is feeling and going through. So
yeah, it really brings it home, doesn't it? And she put up a tremendous fight, and it was great to see a obituary in the New York Times, an amazing woman. But yeah, it really does bring it home. Tell us about the company. It looks like you're back in the office now. Tell us about the company. How have the staff coped? Over 6,000 people in all different parts of the world. How has it been for them, and how have you moderated the way you manage and service clients?
So. To me, it's in a certain way to quote your former prime minister, our finest hour, because it's been absolutely magnificent how our team has responded to the challenge of serving clients from closets and, makeshift kitchen tables, and being deeply in the work and committed to excellence, and, making creative on the fly and quickly. And important work, the work that we've done on racism and on COVID, I think has been some of the best that we've done in the history of the firm. So in terms of Edelman, the reaction of the business initially was really quite dire. Clients stopped spending in tourism and travel and energy, big cuts, and cars, big cuts. And it happened very quickly, much faster than in 01 or 08. And it was more widespread. And then we have stabilized and, in fact, even have some growth from bottom, which is nice. So, we were off low double digits, and now we're back to, say, down 8% or something for the year. And
I think calendar year, Richard, or financial year? Because your financial July to June, isn't it?
Calendar year, because we actually started off pretty well in the first quarter. Even if Asia was slow because of COVID in China,
early warning. Yeah.
It was early warning, but then it started to spread into Europe and then into the States. But we've seemed to have gotten our footing, and so we're certainly at the bottom of the coffee cup, and maybe even beginning to come up the other side. And I don't want to declare victory by any means, because there could be a second wave which should have big impact.
What are you predicting you'll be at for the calendar year when we get to the end of 2020, which can't come soon enough for most of us?
Yeah, I understand. Well, look, I mean, last year we finished at something like 890, give or take. And if we're at somewhere 840, like that, 830, I think that's logical. And it could be a bit lower than that. It could be a bit higher than that. But yeah, I think that's pretty normal for the industry.
Now, it's well documented that you wanted to ride out this recession like you had at the other two that you mentioned, and you weren't able to because it has been unlike any other recession. How much of a blow was that? I mean, letting go of people is never pleasant. Has that lanced the boil, if you like? Are you now in a situation where you can see out the rest of the year without any more cuts and actually start doing a bit more business as usual?
Well, we announced last week that we're restoring all the senior salaries to prior levels this month, and we're really pleased to be able to do that. We are going to start to make some senior hires, and we're going to play the game aggressively, as I had hoped to be able to do when I talked to you first in March. I don't like letting people go, as you well know, and it was only because it was an extreme situation. In some markets, our revenues were off 30%, Steve, in 2 months. That's just stunning. And we still are in a position where we do have some people on furlough in both Canada and in Germany, but we are hoping, through the next couple of months to get past that. But other than that, we're not going to go to any more of what I had to do in June.
Of course, piled on top of the COVID-19 situation were all the incidents of racial injustice and horrible scenes that some of which are continuing. That's caused everyone to pause and self-analyze and look at diversity in their own organizations. You're not alone in that. You've appointed your first Black board level director, I think, as a non-exec. But more needs to be done, and the analysis of the industry shows that, especially at the senior levels. What else are you doing to double down on diversity and make sure that it goes beyond talk this time to real action?
Well, last week we briefed 75 African-American professors from HBCUs, and we told them, the sort of best work that Edelman's been doing. We're going to do the same for the Latino community in November, and so we want to increase the supply of people coming into our business who are Black and Hispanic. And Asian American as well. We also, by hiring Deb Elam onto our board, have made a commitment not just to have diversity on the board, but also to make sure that we have a proper mentoring program within Edelman to make sure that people stay and progress along the career track. I'm so proud to have Lisa Ross as COO of the US and Trish Smith. They've been magnificent. We have a program called Floyd Forward. We're doing counseling for companies, for brands on issues related to, Floyd and Blake and others. And we have 300 plus assignments from companies and brands at the moment underway, because it's an incredibly important moment for business. The study that we did on systemic racism, both in June and September, indicates that it has to be business stepping in the void. Government is only 35% trusted to fix things. Business is twice that, but the performance gap, looked at from an African-American point of view, is 40 points, expectation versus delivery. And whether it's fixing your own house, whether it's, getting brands to show a different face in a picture, Claudia, my Latino wife, is always, we are the future force of America, Latinos, for instance, 60 million strong, and we have to show a different face. And we will do that increasingly.
And how are you counseling clients in that respect? Because we've seen, for example, the CEO of Wells Fargo, Charlie Scharf, making a statement which really appeared a bit tone deaf, in the current climate, by saying these were comments in June, but they kind of came out in the last couple of weeks, saying that he couldn't find enough senior Black talent, and that doesn't really cut it these days, does it? I think Wells Fargo is a client of yours. What are you counseling clients like that in terms of what they should do, but also how they should message around it? Because Charlie Scharf I believe, does have a commitment to diversity.
We have to be part of the solution, Steve. The great example is Unilever discovering on its 100th anniversary of Good Humor, which you wrote about, that the song on the ice cream trucks was a racist minstrel song from the 1890s. And so they get RZA, RZA from Wu-Tang Clan to write the new song. It's up on the ice cream trucks within weeks. And that's the speed and the commitment to change that is absolutely urgent in corporate America. We have to fix the past, but we also have to fix the future. And I know that Wells Fargo is going to commit money to, educating students in school who are African American and Hispanic so that they can be the best bankers in the next generation.
Yeah, that was a really interesting campaign for Unilever. Have you had any results on how many people have taken up the new tune? Because I certainly still hear the old one around my neighborhood, and obviously that's a process, but can you update us on that?
I don't have the stats, Steve, but what I can tell you is the overwhelming reaction, particularly by the drivers who were so desperate to be part of change. And so I'll come back to you on that.
Okay, now you came out with a new, not branding, but you started talking about action communications. We've heard you talking about marketing communications or communications marketing for the past sort of 3 or 4 years. What's the evolution of that, and how does action communications differ? And does that mean communications marketing's gone away? What's the lineage here?
So, Steve, the reality is that the marketplace has evolved, and the necessity of companies and brands doing something and then talking about it is the change. And we in the PR business are uniquely qualified to lead that effort. And I want the industry to rally around this idea. Whether they use action communications, I don't care. But the notion that make sure your companies that you work with do something. And we can't play defense anymore. The game of offense is so much better in your favorite game of football, your football. If you're on your side of the field all the time, you're never going to win. And so if we're always used as the protective mechanism, that's the wrong way to use us. We should be the mechanism that enables the long pass. And we are the best equipped because we are fast, we are news-based, we are connected to communities, and we listen and then talk. We're not just one way, it's social. All the aspects of our business play perfectly to making change. I mean, example, in your former country, Heineken taking on the idea of drinking too much in bars by changing the layout of the bar and making it harder to get to the third beer because there's a different line. It's just smart and how you make your business preserved over the long term.
Yeah, although we're not getting into the bars very much at the moment, and they're seem to be changing the rules every week in the UK, which isn't helping anybody for sure. And we do need some better messaging around that, don't we, and leadership. So, coming out of COVID, how can communicators help with that, and how can business help with that if there is some sort of a leadership void, which you were alluding to earlier?
Well, it's clear again in COVID that there's a desperate fear of the workplace. 50% of people say that they don't think the workplace is safe. Only 8% or 9% say that they will go on the subway or the bus or the train. That means people are locked down by fear. So, I proposed over the summer the idea of a health safety check, and that there be, whether it's sponsored by Lysol or someone else, doesn't matter to me, but it needs to be an authoritative check on restaurants, hotels, et cetera, that says we followed a protocol and that we have joined a system. And it has to be led by business because, clearly government is at cross purposes and we get different information. And Steve, to me, the scariest part is that there's no authoritative source for information about vaccination, for instance. Only 20% each trust federal government, state government, health authorities, and my friends and family. This is a recipe for disaster. So again, business has to step into the void. Edelman is doing a program with Merck and the World Economic Forum to go through the employer, because our theory is, as you know from trust, that my employer is the most trusted institution. So if that's the case, we have to give quality information so people can make decent decisions about whether or not to get the vaccine. And way too many people I talk to are like, I'm not sure. It seems like it's rushed. It seems like it's all political. And the African-American community in the U.S. is a disaster. 30% of people don't get a vaccine. That's a recipe for a future horror show.
Yeah, Ken Frazier at Merck has been very good on that messaging around the vaccines and saying, look, we've got to do the due diligence on it, and two, it's not just going to change everything as soon as it comes out. There's going to need to be lots of vaccines and lots of working together and cooperation around it for sure.
But to me, that's an incredibly important area for PR in the next month. We're not going to go from 0 to 100 on acceptance of vaccines. We have to get gains by inches. And the same thing about return to work. We have to be sure that we're constant in increasing the level of knowledge. That's how persuasion works.
Yeah. Great stuff. Thanks, Richard. Coffee break is over, I'm afraid. Could talk for ages, but thanks for joining us, and look forward to getting back to normal, hopefully, and being able to see you out and about.
Count on it. Thank you.